I live in Columbia, South Carolina. I've lived here for 25 years, and I work at a boutique retail store.
It's a small, independent, very eclectic and quirky. We have a dog named Maggie there, and she's a big part of the store. She's got her own fan club. It's a great thing to be a part of.
Hey there, how are y'all doing?
Great, thank you.
Finding some things you like?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't that cute? Do you see that trim on the bottom of it? So how'd you do in there?
Pretty good.
Did anything work for you? I'm so glad this worked out for you. My name is Carol, and I have narcolepsy.
Narcolepsy is a disorder, chronic neurologic disorder, that causes excessive daytime sleepiness. So they are excessively sleepy no matter how much sleep they get.
When I first started having symptoms, I was pretty young. I would have a hard time concentrating in school. It was hard for me to kind of laugh and have fun without being really nervous. I would have hallucinations. I would see things at night when I was falling asleep. I had a hard time sleeping. Sleep is probably one of the most important things for a person's health and well-being.
We consider sleep a fundamental homeostatic process. In other words, in order to live, you must sleep. If you did not sleep, you could not survive. It's that important.
The most difficult thing for me in having narcolepsy is just not having the energy to do all the things that I want to do.
It has a huge impact on the interpersonal relationships as well as quality of life for these individuals.
I always kind of kept a job that was fairly easy and I could just go in and do it and not have to think too much. I used to feel bad about not being very motivated to further my career. But you know, now that I look back at it, that's exactly what I needed to do. I have 3 children that are adults. It's a little hard for me to talk about them just because I really feel like I wasn't there for them as much as I should have been.
Narcolepsy is very much underdiagnosed. The peak incidence is right around the mid-teenage years, around 15, 16 years old, but it can occur later on in life, and we see another little bump maybe in the mid-30s to around 40. These individuals kind of grow up sleepy, and as a result, they oftentimes don't get diagnosed.
Early diagnosis for narcolepsy is so important. I was just diagnosed actually a couple of years ago. 37 years it took to get my diagnosis, which is way too long.
So these patients present to us because of excessive daytime sleepiness.
I remember going to my doctors and just explaining to them how tired I was all the time and just unmotivated. But I always would go back and say, there's got to be a reason for me to be so tired. And it was really frustrating. I started to kind of give up hope that I was ever going to figure out what was going on. And when I went and saw Dr. Bogan for the first time, we talked about my symptoms.
Once we have a clinical suspicion, then we proceed with polysomnography, which is a nighttime study to make sure nothing else is going on. We can get an idea of the patient's state based on these 30-second examples of brain state. So here the patient's asleep based on this brain activity.
Very good. They just kind of have you get changed into your pajamas and sit there while they wire you up, and they just kind of talk you through it and tell you what all the wires are for.
And that's so I can get a nice, pretty idea of what's happening when your eyes are rolling around, when you're actually going to sleep.
And we'll be measuring your EEG, so the brain waves here, to make sure and see if you go into a dreaming state of sleep.
And then they go ahead and have you get into bed, and they kind of just tell you to go to sleep.
And then the next day, we do a multiple sleep latency test. So we put a patient in a dark room. We have electrodes attached to the head, no needles, no pain, but we're monitoring brain activity, and we can see how those neurotransmitters are working.
They want you to take 5 naps. And what they're doing is they're trying to see how long it takes you to fall asleep and whether or not that you dream during the day. Most people don't dream during the day unless you're sleep deprived.
They fall asleep quickly, and because the REM generator is overactive, we'll see REM intrude during some of those naps. REM sleep is a period of time when the brain is actually active, and during this period of time, the eyes will move, rapid eye movements. So that's why we call it REM sleep.
They also had me take a blood test, which is kind of an HLA test, and that's kind of a genetic marker that a lot of people with narcolepsy have.
So narcolepsy is an autoimmune disorder, we believe, and the current theory suggests that if your body's immune system is a certain type, and then you are exposed to an infection, the body mobilizes its immune system, kills the bug, but at the same time cross-reacts with a group of neurons in the brain that make an important peptide. It's called hypocretin, also has another name, orexin. But this particular peptide is important in terms of activating the awake neurons in the brain.
So once I was finally diagnosed with narcolepsy, my life kind of made sense. My lack of concentration, my exhaustion, even my depression made sense to me then. Even though I still had to deal with it, it seemed to make it easier somehow.
There is type 1 narcolepsy, and that's narcolepsy with cataplexy. And then type 2 is narcolepsy without cataplexy.
The type of narcolepsy that I have includes cataplexy, which is a loss of muscle tone when I experience emotions.
So some strong emotion causes this transient muscle weakness, and they may fall or drop things or feel as if they're going to fall, and they stop and they block the emotion and it goes away.
I can't laugh sometimes without falling to the ground uncontrollably. I have the sewing group, and we're having a good time laughing, and I just wilted and rolled down to the floor and landed on this quilt that was, being prepared.
So these individuals can feel as if they're melting. The knees will buckle, or the head gets heavy, or if it's severe enough, they may have complete paralysis, but they're still awake.
They just thought I was being silly, but that's cataplexy.
Most patients, amazingly, don't know that cataplexy is abnormal. They've kind of grown up this way. It's just me.
In looking back, I could see times in my life when just strange things were happening and I just couldn't explain it. I always thought they were just kind of quirks of mine. Things like standing like this is kind of a symptom of cataplexy when I was losing muscle tone. And playing basketball, I could never do a layup. There was one time during a state championship in 8th grade. I go running down the court and I'm dribbling, and when I get to the basket, my coach keeps on yelling, "Nick, stop and shoot," because he knows I can't do a layup. And so I got there and I just tripped and fell. It was the emotion and the thrill of, making that star move that everybody just applauds. Just the thought of that made me trip and fall. I think about that moment often. I couldn't understand why I couldn't do it. Why couldn't I do a layup? I know now why. It was because of narcolepsy. Living with narcolepsy, I can say it's evolved. When I'm tired, I need to rest. When I'm angry, I need to go away and have a little peace. And when I can't do things, I need to say no. And that's been big in coping with narcolepsy. My husband is super supportive. He does all of the cooking. This makes it so I can go ahead and be awake during the evening to do homework with my children, or, just be able to stay up and socialize a little bit. There's no cure for narcolepsy, and I have my good days and my bad days, but I'm hopeful. I'm starting to finally feel good and have a little extra energy. Some of the habits that I need to kind of keep my narcolepsy in check is a good routine. I wake up at the same time every day. My neighbor Janet and I have become good friends, and so we enjoy walking every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. That's our routine. It's me doing something good and healthy for myself, but also a time where I can see and keep connected with people without, being too exhausted by staying out at night or anything. So one of the exercises that I've found that's really good for me is yoga. Yoga is a way for me to keep my body limber and relaxed, but also gain muscle without actually burning too many calories. And it's really made a big difference in my calmness and my peace, and just reminding me that everything's okay. I want to stand up and be a voice for people, to let them know that it's a real disease and it seriously affects your ability to live day to day like a normal person. I am not going to let narcolepsy define me. There's so much I want to do. I may be 50 years old, but I still have a long ways to go, and there's so many things that I haven't done because of narcolepsy. It's time for me to start seeing what I can do, and so that's really exciting.